Hello, I'm Jason Price, Consultant Neuropsychologist in the Medical Psychology Service here at South East Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust. This presentation is to help in developing a good communication style, particularly for team leads and managers, as part of a wellbeing strategy for staff. It is hoped that the techniques described in this presentation from a motivational interview framework will be useful in enhancing empathic and compassionate conversation with staff for their well-being and for good team dynamics. The terms empathy and compassion mean different things to different people, so it's important to operationalize those terms before we continue. The importance of empathy as a significant factor in interpersonal engagement was notably highlighted by the founder of counseling, Carl Rogers, in the 1960s. Rogers attributed successful therapeutic engagement primarily to an empathic connection between therapist and client. Now, whilst this presentation is not about training counsellors, the principles are the same in forming positive interpersonal connections to facilitate both personal and professional support and development. Now, if we were linguists or philosophers, we probably have a lot of discussion about the similarities and differences between the concepts of empathy and compassion. The basic distinction is that empathy involves being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person, to feel the same way that someone else does, not to just intellectually understand why someone might feel a certain way. This allows us to feel a deeper connection with other people, particularly in times of distress, and this allows for the nurturing of feelings of safety and security. Most of us, most of the time, are quite empathic in the helping professions, and it's a fundamental part of the human condition. From an evolutionary perspective, empathy has allowed the human race, as group animals, to thrive and live together in larger and larger groups. We even have neurons which are specialized in empathic reactions to other people's behavior. Our ability to empathize allows us to bond together in groups and bond quickly. I'm sure everyone has had the experience of meeting someone for the first time and saying, "It feels like I've known you for years." This is empathy at work. I will talk a little bit more about the specific components of an empathic engagement a little later. Moving on to compassion. Now, compassion briefly is acting in a way that alleviates the distress or discomfort of another person. To summarize, empathy requires us to be able to feel the same way as another person, but not necessarily to act on this. Compassion, by comparison, demands more of an action outcome. So, both empathy and compassion are required for us to support our colleagues in a way that fosters positive relationships. We can be empathic but do nothing to help. We can also alleviate the distress of others without having any emotional connection to the way they are feeling. For example, someone could be distressed because they cannot afford to buy their family food. We could have a profound sense of how distressed that person might be feeling. This would be empathy, but not do anything to help. That is, to not act compassionately. Conversely, we might not feel anything about the person's distress, but be quite happy to give them some money or provide them with food to alleviate that distress. In reality, it is obviously highly unlikely that such discrete splitting would occur, and so empathy and compassion can be seen as close stable mates, usually occurring at the same time. Compassionate leadership is now widely recognised as a key characteristic of a successful and future-orientated NHS working environment. Why might this be? Well, the Caring to Change document from the King's Fund highlights how compassionate leadership inspires vision and strategy, promotes positive inclusion and participation, nurtures enthusiastic team and cross-boundary working,
and provides the right culture for staff to develop the confidence to be innovative in solving problems and developing more effective and efficient interventions and ways of working. Now, this makes perfect sense from a psychological perspective, as psychological research has long since demonstrated that children who have secure attachments with caregivers, that is, they feel supported and encouraged through demonstrations of empathic and compassionate caregiving, are generally more outgoing, confident, and willing to explore their environment and problem solve themselves. As adult learners, we too require the sense of empathy and compassion from our managers and supervisors to develop with confidence. So, empathic and compassionate leadership builds trust, builds loyalty, builds confidence, builds autonomy, builds creativity, and our teams, relationships, and work quality are the better for it. We've so far spoken quite generally about empathy and compassion and why these factors are important to our working lives as much as to our personal lives. But we need to have a little more information on the specifics if we are able to teach empathy and compassion, or recognise in ourselves when we are and are not being empathic and compassionate. There is a model of empathy which is helpful by Thwaites and Bennett-Levy, which you can see on the screen, and which aims to identify the constituent parts of an empathic interaction. First of all, we need to adopt a mental attitude of wanting to understand someone else's communications, perhaps giving ourselves the time to do this. By this, I mean keeping free from distractions, mentally and physically. For example, making sure we will not be interrupted perhaps if dealing with a staff member's concerns, or not allowing our thoughts about other things such as what we need to pick up from the supermarket on the way home from work to intrude. We need to be fully available for an empathic interaction to have full effect. It doesn't mean that we can't do these things when we are busy, it just means that when we give our time to another person, we do this with goodwill and full attentiveness. If we can't do this, an alternative empathic response might be to say to someone, "Things are really busy at the moment and I want to give your concerns or ideas my full attention. Can we arrange a time when we will both have space to give this some uninterrupted thought?" We also want to be non-judgmental in attitude and adopt almost a naive curiosity to further explore what someone is trying to communicate to us, even if this is something which we initially think or feel is wrong in some way. Being willing to explore and to understand promotes positive engagement, and this is much more likely to lead to a mutually satisfactory conclusion. Think of the TV presenter Louis Theroux, who is a master of this technique. Watch some of his programs and look for the ways he engages with people who he shares little commonality with in terms of lifestyle or beliefs. Yet, he always manages to be accepted by these groups or individuals, and this allows him to explore some of their questionable beliefs or actions, and even maybe gets them to accept some of the shortcomings of their beliefs and actions as well. Moving on to empathic attunement. Now, this is probably what most of us think of when we think of empathy, the ability to pick up on the vibes of what someone else is trying to communicate to us. Some people seem to naturally have this ability, and some perhaps less so. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't improve our attunement skills, and I will come back to how we can learn these skills a little later when we apply some of the principles and techniques of motivational interviewing. Now, it's fine to be able to understand how someone is feeling or what they're trying to communicate to us, but it's also important to be able to demonstrate our understanding back to that person for a truly empathic interaction. Again, I will cover some of the skills on how to do this when I speak about motivational interviewing processes. Finally, to help us have empathic interactions, we need to have a bit of knowledge about what empathy and compassion mean, and hopefully we are already there at this point in the presentation. So, empathy in an interpersonal interaction is more than just being able to have a sense of what another person is experiencing. We now turn our attention to motivational interviewing and what this can teach us about how to have effective, empathic conversations to help move others forward, either by just simply feeling understood or by helping someone to make adaptive choices and behaviours, by helping them think through their issues and come up with their own solution. And the starting point is having an empathic engagement. You might recognise some of the points on the screen from earlier slides. Motivational interviewing adopts as its most basic stance those personal behaviours which are referred to as the spirit of motivational interviewing. This is how we set the groundwork to have an effective interaction with someone, and active listening is central to this. We have to be paying attention, and removing mental or physical distractions will help to demonstrate that you are willing and freely giving of your attention to the other person. And we have to suspend our own beliefs for a time, and by that I mean be non-judgmental. Also, we have to resist the temptation of what is referred to as the righting reflex. And this is the tendency to immediately diagnose what the problem is and give a solution. Now, this can be effective if someone is wanting a tangible answer to something. For example, should I prescribe drug X or Y? But in situations where people are having a personally difficult time, giving an immediate solution, no matter how well-meaning, can be perceived as being dismissive or patronising, and that will not be helpful. For example, a member of staff reports feeling exhausted most of the time, and it is affecting them at work. We could jump in with, well, try to get more sleep and maybe have a few more breaks during shift. We and our colleagues are quite capable individuals, so if the solution was as simple as going to bed a bit earlier, I'm sure they would have done this already. Therefore, offering a solution in such a situation is likely to miss the real issue that the person is coming to you for, and therefore accidentally ignoring or compounding the problem. Let's now move on to specific skills. It's useful to try and notice how we're communicating during a conversation. From a motivational interviewing perspective, a conversation is like a dance with two or more partners. Not only do we have to be aware of what we are doing, we have to complement the steps of our partners, following the ebb and flow of the dance. Otherwise, we are in danger of crashing together and the dance can end prematurely or with injury. 3 styles of communication that are identified under a motivational interviewing framework are following, guiding, and directing. Now, the slide in front of you is pretty self-explanatory in terms of the different behaviours under each style. The skill is in being aware of how we are communicating and being able to meet the needs of the other people in the conversation. Sometimes a person might want some specific information from you, such as what medication dose do I need to administer, or how to perform a particular procedure. A directing style might be appropriate here. Sometimes people just need to offload or communicate distress in some way, perhaps seeking an empathic reaction for soothing. A following style would work well. Sometimes we can find ourselves directing when people come to us in distress and start to tell people what to do to solve the issue which is causing the distress. This is the righting reflex. And I think we all know that this isn't always appreciated. And sometimes we have conversations with people who seem ambivalent about something or who need to develop some specific skills to help solve an issue. A guiding style might work well in this situation. We obviously need to use all the different communication styles in a conversation at different points. It's getting the right blend for the particular conversation we are having that's important in achieving a satisfactory interaction. To do this better, we need to constantly be evaluating what we are saying and how we are saying it, and also being aware of the other person's response. Core skills in successful conversations start with the ability to have a satisfying engagement, an empathic engagement. Have a think about conversations you have had that have gone well and ones that have not gone so well, with people that you have to deal with and the people that you like to deal with. I'm sure you will find that the people you have good interactions with display a lot of the empathic engagement skills themselves. In motivational interviewing, a set of empathic conversation skills are encapsulated in the acronym OARS: open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. We will go through each one of these skills in turn. Using open-ended questions allows for a richer conversation and for the other person to have the opportunity to fully express themselves. This in turn means that we are more likely to get a quicker understanding of what the other person is trying to communicate to us. An open question is one which invites elaboration from the other person. It also helps the other person to feel listened to. This doesn't mean that we should use closed questions, that is, questions which only invite a yes or a no response. We just need to make sure that we are also using a liberal dose of open questions. Practice in your own time trying to make a closed question into an open question. For example, instead of saying, "Does this hurt?" maybe say, "How does this feel?" Instead of saying, "Have you tried doing this?" turn that into an open question by asking, "What have you tried before that worked well?" Affirmations help to make people feel valued and builds confidence. Look for examples during conversation to reflect to the other person that they have various strengths or achieved various accomplishments. This is particularly useful for good leadership and building confidence, self-efficacy and positive self-regard in our staff. Reflections are crucial in demonstrating empathy and allowing us to demonstrate that we have listened and understood the other person's communication, whether these are thoughts, ideas, emotions, or dilemmas. They are also very helpful in moving forward a conversation, particularly when we get stuck for something to say or just aren't sure what the other person is trying to tell us. A simple reflection is just demonstrating that you have paid attention to something important that the other person is trying to communicate. We can simply just repeat back what has been said by the person or change it slightly, as in the example on the slide. A complex reflection goes a step further and requires us to articulate something that the other person is not saying but is clearly communicating, either non-verbally or by the use of the tone of their voice rather than the content. This can be very helpful in building trust and respect, and even helping the other person to become aware of their own thoughts or feelings or behaviours that they might not be fully aware of. Don't be afraid of getting a complex reflection wrong or off the mark if the reflection is given with a genuine sense of compassion and a genuine sense of attention. We will be forgiven, and it will actually give the other person the opportunity to clarify what they mean. Summaries are very helpful in demonstrating to the other person that we have understood what they are trying to communicate to us and that we have all the important points covered. It also helps us to understand complex situations or information, as we have to accurately process the information ourselves in order for us to summarize for the other person. Using summaries at judicial points during a conversation is extremely helpful when you feel that it is important to clarify both your own understanding and that of the other person. This ensures that we are both reading from the same page, so to speak. Earlier in the presentation, we talked about resisting the writing reflex, the tendency to tell people what to do in a situation or correct them, even if we think we're doing the right thing. Now, there are obviously times when this is appropriate, but there are other ways of delivering information without sounding dismissive, authoritarian, or sometimes leaving the other person feeling told off or leading them to feel inadequate in some sort of a way. Motivational interviewing advocates the elicit, provide, elicit structure to deliver information. First, we seek the other person's permission to give them the information. We then provide the information, and finally we elicit from the other person that they have understood what we have said, as in the example on the slide. As a further example, consider a scenario where a member of your staff comes to you and says that they are struggling at work and at home and feel very low in mood. They look tearful when telling you this. Well, you could say, you might be depressed. You can go to the GP yourself and get some antidepressants or some counselling, or I can refer you to occupational health. Do you want me to refer you? Contrast this with, it sounds like things are really difficult for you at the moment due to lots of different responsibilities. I've got a few ideas how we might support you through this. Would you like to talk through how they might be helpful? Now, the first response might be accurate in terms of information and a potential solution, but which response would you prefer from your line manager if this was you? And now to summarise. Just to say that most of us, most of the time, use the skills that we've spoken about quite instinctively, particularly as helping professionals. Sometimes conversations don't go well, despite our well-meaning intentions. When this happens, go back to the basics, the spirit of motivational interviewing. Be empathic, encourage empowerment, listen to what you are saying, how you are saying it, and what the response is from the other person. If it's not going so well, think through the motivational interviewing skills we have covered in this presentation. Ask yourself, do I need to listen more, guide more? Do I need to reflect more, use more open questions, etc.? There are lots of good YouTube videos on motivational interviewing and having empathic conversation, so have a look at these in your own time. Two particularly useful videos I find are called The Effective Physician and The Ineffective Physician. These clips are about 5 minutes long, and I'm sure you'll find them very, very helpful. Finally, I'd just like to thank you for watching and listening to this presentation. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me, and further training in motivational interviewing is available upon request. I would encourage you just to take these skills away now and just practice with friends and family, and very, very quickly I'm sure you'll realise how useful these skills are and how quickly you start to use them instinctively. Thank you very much for your time.